Match 3 of the Vintage Showcase Qualifier. This time I'm gonna draw. Opening hands pretty good as again. Bazaar of Baghdad, Force of Will, like Dredge, Bloodghast. Like, you know, not much else that I could really hope for. I mean, of course I could really hope for another Bazaar, more forces, etc. But Bazaar and Force is already above average on 7. Here we keep. Upon listen with Verdant Catacombs. Verdant Catacombs typically means bug, the Sultai deck in Vintage. Doing Deathrite Shaman, Tarmogoyf, etc. similar cards. Activate Bazaar, draw another Bloodghast, draw Hollow One. Go Bazaar, now it's just perfect, now it's just a nut sand. Wasteland me, not a big deal as I have the second Bazaar ready. Hoping to hit on the Dredger with the Shambling Shell, although given that Shambling Shell is a pretty small Dredger, we'll see. Fortunately, if I leak, that's actually a little bit of a problem, but my board is at least gonna conclude of a Hollow One, Narcomoeba, 2 Bloodghasts, and whatever else I mill. Maybe a Price Amalgam. In situations like this, Creeping Chill and Serum Powder are as useless as each other while in hand. I typically choose to discard Serum Powder first because information about how many Creeping Chills are still in my deck is worth at least something compared to the Serum Powder being worth literal 0 outside of the mulligan phase. I place an Underground Sea Ponders, by which I mean they actually think, not cast the card Ponder, and concede because they don't think they can win. Rightfully so. Sideboarding, obviously expecting Leyline, so +4 Force of Vigor in. Leyline, Wasteland, both not needed. Sickening Shoal is kind of fine against Deathrite Shaman, which typically is not a huge problem, but might be a little bit of a problem. Unmask I'm not sure about, but it's a fine interaction. They also sometimes play cards like Assassin's Trophy or whatnot, which are cards that you could discard from their hand. I chose to remove Cabal Therapy, as I don't find it particularly necessary against Bug. You can overpower them with just the creatures, and most games are gonna be... They're not playing any combos in their deck, they're playing literal Tarmogoyfs and Deathrite Shamans. So most games are gonna be won or lost on whether I get to do Bazaar stuff, not on whether I get to stop them from comboing off by discarding their hand after I get to mill over my deck. Opening 7 is an obvious mulligan. 6 cards. Sickening Shoal, Force of Vigor, Darkmoon Savage as a Dredger, fine keep. Bottom a Powder because it's useless. They do open with a Leyline. I don't have a green card to pitch to Force yet. Normally they play Forest Deathrite, which might mean that they don't have a blue mana, they just like kept Forest Leyline of the Void yet. Does happen sometimes. And this is interesting. I do find both a Force of Will, a big Dredger, and a green card. I can't really have it all because I'm going to discard 2 cards right now, so my hand size is gonna be 6. I'm going to absolutely need to Force of Vigor my opponent, so that's 2 cards, Force of Vigor and Extra Survival. Then I'd like to keep Force of Will idly. Excuse me, my hand size is actually gonna be 5. I'm actually gonna discard 3 cards to the Bazaar. So if I want to keep both forces, if I want to protect my Force of Vigor from being Force of Will by my opponent, by using my own Force of Will, and I need to keep Amalgam, Nox Survival, Force of Will, Force of Vigor, and then I just get to keep only 1 card from the remaining 4, which pretty obviously is gonna be Sting Redeem then. Now, Deathrite Shaman is a little bit of a problem, but I can try to overpower it by throwing like multiple Dredgers, like trying to hit multiple Dredgers. It does take a lot for the Deathrite Shaman to actually contain Bazaar of Baghdad being active. Not nothing though. I'm happy to see that they don't play Wasteland. And now they put a Leovold, Emissary of Thresh, on the stack. Because of Leovold's ability, I will obviously respond with Force of Vigor onto their artifacts immediately to make sure that they don't draw any cards from me targeting things. In response, my opponent casts a Ancestral Recall targeting themselves by activating the Deathrite Shaman. Now, they only have one card in hand. Now, I would really like to counter the Ancestral Recall, because then they only have one card in their hand, they can't protect the Leyline then, which is one card because Force needs 2 cards. On the other hand, Leovold is also a pretty big threat, and I would like to spend my Force of Will on Leovold if possible, as it makes it so that my Bazaar draws less cards, which means that it might be harder to start dredging through a Deathrite Shaman with a Leovold on the battlefield. Therefore, I choose to let their Ancestral resolve, hoping that they whiff on drawing a Force or drawing a blue card for Force, or like failing at Protect the Leyline, and then being able to hit 2 birds with the same stone. Of course, letting them have +3 cards is a little bit threatening. But yeah, that's the line that I have to choose, that I choose to go with. Unfortunately, amongst the Ancestral Recall cards, my opponent finds Force of Will and or a blue card to pitch. They pitch a Flusterstorm, so Leovold ends up resolving. A draw under a Dredger, that's actually a good draw. That means that I will have 2 Dredgers to be able to get things going through the Deathrite Shaman. So I wait till my opponent's turn, so that I actually get to draw a card with Bazaar, then discard 3. No upside in doing that in my turn. Draw the Sickening Shoal, ditch all 3. And unfortunately my opponent has an Assassin's Trophy, so they destroy my Bazaar instead of just exiling my Dredger with Deathrite Shaman, letting me Bazaar again. So I manually pick up my Sting with the Imp, hit 2 Creeping Chills, but this is not really gonna add up against the Deathrite Shaman. The chances of winning are a little bit slim, best. Might have been a slightly premature concession, but it probably wasn't. It probably was 0%. Now, I think it might have been possible that I was supposed to force that Ancestral Recall, and that might have actually changed the outcome of the game. It was a pretty hard decision, I'm not sure. On the play I choose to add an Unmask, add an Ichorid for it. I think Ichorid is the worst payoff creature against Deathrite Shaman, as it stays in the graveyard for the most time. It is the worst against the exiled creature gain life ability from both directions. First I mulligan, because the hand was obviously a mulligan, no Bazaar, nothing. Then I powder. As I have mentioned previously, I end up putting back Chill on the bottom of my deck. And I'm greeted by this incredible 6. My opponent kept 7, but you know, Bazaar into 2 hollow ones, pretty perfect. Opening, I have a Dredger, I have no forces to answer hate, but open and open on a Leyline, so I'm pretty glad. So I activate Bazaar. What am I scared of in this situation? Well, first thing is Force of Vigor, but I think Bug is not even playing Force of Vigor nowadays too much, so I shouldn't be scared about that too much. And well, it's not like I'm gonna hold a hollow one for no reason. That would be really poor. We're gonna play both anyways. I am scared of Wasteland, as I have no way to recoup from that. I could discard Ichorid Shell Bloodghast or Ichorid Shell. Discarding Shell makes my next Bazaar activation slightly better if I miss on a Dredger from the first shell. Discarding the Bloodghast is better against the Wasteland well, there's upsides and downsides. Against Wasteland I can either guarantee getting back a Bloodghast with the Darkmoon Salvage Blade, or I can guarantee being able to dredge free twice. I think putting the Bloodghast into the graveyard is overall a better idea here. So I play my second hollow one. Opponent counters the second one while telling Gash to pay the cost. They didn't want to pay for the first one, but they did want to pay for the second one. They go Fetchland, Mox, Failures Cage. Now, I don't have a Force of Vigor to kill the cage, obviously. My graveyard is not active currently, so I choose to take a natural draw. Finally, still a Shambling Shell. And I'm lucky enough to draw, while not a Force, another Hollow one, which is also pretty meaningful and accelerates the clock pretty strongly. Now, Cage is a hit card, but it actually is pretty meaningfully weaker than Leyline against my version of the deck with Creeping Chills. Because opponents already at 14 life, if they're gonna take another hit from the Hollow ones, the Creeping Chills are gonna trigger and they're gonna drain them to death. Therefore I choose to dredge the Shambling Shell. Shambling Shell is also a black card for my Sickening Shoal. I could show the Leovold to limit my opponent's life total. Instead of that, I just attacked. I honestly didn't expect my opponent to just block with the Leovold. Not sure which line was correct. Giving them a draw is also a pretty bad proposition, so if they want to chump block, it's not a really bad thing for me. Went through a Wasteland, wasted my Bazaar. I choose to dredge as much as possible to try to hit my Chills. I fail. On top, they don't have a creature in play, so I can pick up a black card next turn from my graveyard for Sickening Shoal if I need to. So this time I dredge the Golgari Grave Troll. No Chills, and an Arcomoeba. I click yes just in case. Obviously it doesn't return through Gravity's Cage though. When cast a Ponder. Ponders, chooses to shuffle his or her library, draws a card with Ponder, and concedes the game. So I'm very happy to be 3-0. Round 4. Paired against I am actually level 1, a reasonably recognizable vintage player and content creator, even for how obscure the format is. I get to go first. I see an opening hand of 2 Bazaars and Drip Mine, Noxious Survival. All good, all fine. And it actually is all fine, up to the very moment in which he just deploys a game 1, turn 0, Leyline the Void. And that is not something that my deck can beat unless I draw multiple Hollow ones. Given that I drew 0 Hollow ones, my Bazaar activation and no punchable spells, I basically can't do anything with this hand, and being slightly salty, I tap, yeah, have fun, totally. Because it's all in good faith. So the cards that I discard, like, the only thing that matters anymore is what's left in my hand. Discarded cards don't matter. Someone plays Trinisphere with Mesh's Workshop, so I can't cast spells. I can't cast Hollow ones anymore, so I'm dead. I have no outs. Can't cast spells, can't cast forces, so I'm just gonna pass priority and wait for him to cast some more spells to learn a bit more about his deck. There's a Dark Depths, which gives me a pretty good idea of what deck is that. This is the Shop's Golos combo deck. It plays main deck Leyline of the Void. Partially because it's good, and partially because it combines with Helm of Obedience. And that 2-card combo lets him mill my deck entirely. Gets both of those cards too. He also plays Thespian Stage, Dark Depths to combo with Golos 2 to produce a 2020 and some light prison pieces. This is not a good matchup, given that, as soon as he mulliganed to Leyline, I realistically wasn't able to win game 1. So I really have to work hard to cobble together 2 wins through all of the hate that is contained in his deck. Spyglasses for my Bazaar, Leylines, the Spheres for my forces, probably Tabernacle, probably some extra graveyard tape, maybe Cages, maybe, for sure Wastelands and Strip Mines. There is just a lot of stuff, so definitely not the favorite to emerge victorious out of this one. And Wasteland this matchup as a means of interaction against Thespian Stage, Dark Depths combo. I cut Cabal Therapy because I think it's not really realistical that I'm gonna need it / use it. And mask at least is free, so on the play it's okay, on the draw it's gonna be okay too. Like I would keep it on the draw too, although not the greatest. Like it's worse on the draw, obviously, than it is on the play. That's just how unmask is. I pondered cutting Mental Misstep, but I assumed that he might have cages, so I can't just comes, etc. Because to win I need some interaction, I can't just have Bazaar and I need some forces or some other interaction with his game plan. I keep this lame 6-card hand with Bazaar. He doesn't have a ley line at least, so that's good. Get to very pretty tame activation. So I have a Wasteland hand, so I have a land drop to return the Bloodghast. I dredged attack, hoping that I will get some extra power. I do hit the Price Amalgam, and now I have 5 power on the battlefield. So, you know, there is some chance that I will get him with this. This is a clock. Thespian stage into cage. That's okay. Now I can choose to either draw or dredge. If I draw, the good draws in my deck contain more Wastelands, Rip Mine, Force of Vigor, another Bazaar, kinda, not really, not for cage. If I dredge, I can dredge over Creeping Chills, which could speed up the clock. Given that right now his lifestyle is 20 and I kill him in 4 hits, I decide to draw, because I think the chances of drawing Force of Vigor are better than milling a shield, and because, well, are worth more than the chance to mill a shield, because if I mill just 1 shield, it's gonna go to 17. This is still a 4-turn clock with the cards that I have in play. Although Ancient Tomb activation changes that. Place a tomb and place a Spyglass, and now we are in a pickle too. Wasteland is really valuable to have on the battlefield because it stops Thespian stage Dark Depths combo, not letting him make a 20/20. It also checks Tabernacle at Penal Veil. So I could, for example, let the Spyglass go, and then I get to keep Wasteland, which I can use to pay for Tabernacle if he has Tabernacle. On the other hand, he keeps 3 mana, I'm dead to Dark Depths immediately. I'm not really in the best shape to beat Tabernacle TBH. That'll take a while, etc. So because of that, I do decide to Wasteland the Ancient Tomb, taking the chance that maybe he's gonna end up being mana screwed, and maybe I will be able to hit a Creeping Chill while dredging the Tumbling Shell and kill him in 2 attacks. Did name Wasteland. Pick up the shell, no shields, so 3-turn clock, and he does have the Tabernacle. Now I have to pay for all my creatures, or else it will be destroyed. Given I have no lands, it will be destroyed. Run and Mask. This is a card I get to cast, at least. I see a Helm of Obedience, Thorn, Ancient Tomb, Bojuka Bog, Dark Depths, and through the combination of cards that he was holding, no matter what play I would have taken this match, I wouldn't have gotten through all of that. The Bojuka Bog being potentially a problem at some points, the extra Ancient Tomb to be able to make it 20/20 reasonably quickly, both the Tabernacle, the Depths combo. If I choose to keep the Wasteland, he gets to name Wasteland again. Anyways, and you know, just makes it 20/20. Marit Lage token on the next turn. Draws plays a Sphere. You know, I was super dead and super locked. Now I'm super deader and super more locked. Well, he gets to make a 20/20 Marit Lage. During his main phase to play around my top decks. We have 3-1 record so far. Might be that I top 8 even if I lose this round. Obviously I'd rather win than lose and be sure. So I'm really glad to see an opening hand of Bazaar into 2 Hollow Ones. I'm kind of bummed to see a Leyline of the Void, but if I'm happy to face Leyline of the Void ever it's with 2 hollow ones and a Force of Will that unfortunately I didn't find a blue card for. Quite wastelanded me, but honestly it doesn't even do too much, given that my Bazaar is not all that useful anymore, with hollow ones being already there and like there is not much else to find a deck. Luckily I have another Bazaar and I also draw another hollow ones, so you know, play 2 4/4s into a third 4/4 really to kill my opponent. And this way I managed to win the game without ever learning what was my opponent's archetype exactly. I expect that I'm facing something similar to the deck that I faced the last round, the Golos Shops Head of Obedience deck. So definitely my opponent has main deck ley lines, then obviously they're gonna have sideboarded ley lines too, so Force of Vigor comes in. Cabal Therapy similarly not necessary against a deck that's not a combo deck. And the Void gets cut because it's not particularly good. Like Wasteland against opposing Wastelands occasionally, so I'll bring them in. This time, not being sure about all the last cuts I ended up cutting in. Hickory and Darkmoor Salvage. Darkmoor Salvage, when you keep Wastelands and then you add an extra Wasteland from your sideboard, you actually have more lands to trigger your Bloodghast, so it's actually something you can do, I think. No Bazaar means Mulligan. My 6-card hand does have a Bazaar, does have a Force of Will too, does have an Unmask and a Strip Mine, so a lot of options. Glad to keep it. No Vigor, but a green card for Vigor already there. Here I wonder a little bit. Mental Missteps doesn't have too many targets in my opponent's deck, presumably. But given that Misstep is my blue card for Force of Will, I decide to keep it. And here I got surprised a little bit. I didn't expect Reality Smasher. Turns out that my opponent's archetype is at least slightly different than what Justin I am actually level 1 ran into me last turn. So I choose to under the Reality Smasher because it is a meaningful clock. And finally I also happen to draw a Force of Vigor. Now, because my opponent led on a Strip Mine as a land necessary to play the Reality Smasher, I get to play my own Strip Mine and strip their strip. Meaning that I'll start dredging, start activating Bazaar a turn later, but I also get, well, presumably more activations. I'm gonna die to the Strip Mine on board, so I'm willing to take that. Turn off, obviously. With Force of Vigor drawn, I'm not willing to Unmask because I think Vigor is gonna be better than Unmask. My opponent already played out most of their hand. They had another extremely powerful card. I think I would have rather had Vigor left over. I thought briefly about hitting their mana, but I think it wasn't too good. In the same way, I thought briefly about discarding Vigor and unmasking them here, but it makes even less sense than unmasking on the last turn, on the previous turn, right? So I decided to keep the Force of Vigor as it's just much more use for that. If my opponent draws a hate card, be the Cage, be something I can even hit their mana, I could limit my opponent's mana, make them go to 1 mana, but I decide against it. If they, you know, play a Needle or a Gravitas Cage, that would be just too weak. On top of that, Mana Crypt, I can deal various amounts of damage to my opponent. They already took 6, so it is actually a hindrance to have a Tormod's Crypt, a Mana Crypt on the battlefield. Tormod's Crypt against Dredge is actually very good. My opponent just played a Revoker. Revoker has no text against Dredge. There is no cards that you can name, given that the limitation of Phyrexian Revoker is that it cannot name land cards, so neither Bazaar nor Wasteland nor Strip Mine is nameable. For that reason I choose not to use my Force of Vigor, just keep it for a longer time, maybe like save it for a better use. Just in case, so I decide to dredge a bunch. In my draw step, I pick up a Shambling Shell instead of Liquid Imp, just so that I can cast Force of Vigor if necessary immediately without having to pick up the Gambling Shell my next draw step. Between the Hollow One and Creeping Chills, my opponent is put down to 1. They lose the third Mana Crypt in a row. I have to admit, I was pretty fortunate with my opponent's Mana Crypt flips so far, in losing them a lot. And I win the match. That's actually still interesting because I still don't exactly know what was my opponent's archetype. I suppose it was actually the mono-white deck with main deck Leylands of the Voids, mono-white Eldrazi deck. It is a somewhat tier 2 popular vintage deck. One of this deck's huge downsides though is the fact that it runs way too few white sources to properly operate, so it's possible that we've seen that in this match where my opponent just didn't draw any white cards throughout the game and wasn't able to cast their Thalias, Archons of Emeria maybe even Containment Priest properly. But after this match, with the 4-1 score, I get to move on to the top 8, which is going to be covered in the next video released tomorrow. So check this out too.